I'm Mark Sponsler, and this is the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast, the week starting Sunday, November 8th. Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, real data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype. Looking at significant wave heights to the North Pacific Ocean, we see an area of seas in the 18-foot range off of Northern California, part of a gale system that pushed down the coast on Saturday and Sunday. And then another area of seas at 19 foot, pushing up into Alaska and not really doing a whole lot. As usual, we'll start looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales when they form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, and we see that right here on the dateline with winds 160 knots. We'll push this up just a little bit. There you go, 160 knots, starting to fall into the trough, but the trough is pretty much cut off with winds flowing on top of it. And it is a trough that we're looking for, because a trough helps create a counterclockwise flow off and down at the surface. And if that circulation is strong enough, it produces winds, of course. And if winds are strong enough, they produce seas. If seas are high enough, as they radiate away from the fetch area, they turn into swell. And if swell is big enough, when it hits your beach, it creates surf. Right, so there is some weak potential in this area right here. But other than that, the jet continues north. You can see it's ridging. That's a sign of high pressure. So there's actually weak high pressure here, pushing the jet a little to the north. It troughs there. Another stronger area of high pressure is in the Gulf of Alaska. Then you see a strong trough, but it's all inland over, what is that, Nevada or so? Nevada, and or Utah even for that matter. Yes, and inland, doing nothing to produce swell in and of itself, but with high pressure here and low pressure here, there's a gradient, there's north winds along the coast, creating lots of chop and wind swell, but that's about it. All right, so let's move out. We'll get into Monday. The trough on the dateline pretty much gets cut off completely and is useless, and the jet tries to consolidate, tries to build across the Pacific as we get into Tuesday. No troughs forecast. Then as we get, look at that, winds start building to almost, 200 knots, maybe even a little bit more as we get into Wednesday. Perfect setup if it would just start falling into a trough, which it kind of does on Wednesday off the U.S. West Coast, but very close to the shore there. Doesn't give it much room, even if it does form a trough, to produce gale development. And here we go, still 190 knot winds as we're into Wednesday night and Thursday. Yes, likely some low pressure developing right there, but nothing, very close to the coast, not able to get a whole lot of traction. You really want to see all the trough form somewhere out here in the middle of the North Pacific. And then the jet basically takes aim and just starts slamming into, let's say, Southern Oregon, Northern California. Good chance for weather event as we get into Friday and Saturday. Arc event, atmospheric river with the jet pushing straight on shore. Too bad the jet isn't a little bit further south. The focus really looks to be somewhere on the Oregon-California border as we get into Saturday. We're looking out further to the west. The jet almost splits, not doing anything. We're into Sunday. It ridges, and then there is this perpetual kind of trough thing going on here in the northern Gulf as we get into Sunday. That gets a little bit more amplified, so maybe there's some hope there. But kind of an interesting pattern. Also notice the jet starting to split as we get into Monday and off over the West Pacific, so probably no real support. The focus looks to be somewhere in the Gulf of Alaska, and mainly, we'll say, Thursday and beyond. So we'll see if that bears out as we continue digging into the charts here. So let's get down to the surface, see if what we think's going on in the jet stream is really going to happen. Surface level pressure here, surface level winds, high pressure 1032 millibars. It's moderately strong over the Gulf of Alaska. Low pressure inland. The closeness of the low inland and the high here, creating a gradient, north winds 30 knots over Northern California waters, generating wind swell. Some sort of a low in the area off of Kamchatka, but all the fetches aim north, and that's pretty much it. Put this into motion, see what happens as we get into Monday. Here we go. Low starts building off of the Northern Kuril Islands, 35, 40 knot winds. Everything else, another little low up here in the northern Gulf doing about the same thing. But it is this low off of the northern Kuril Islands. Here's Kamchatka, that area. Builds to 45 knot winds on Monday night, and then 50 to 55 knots on Tuesday morning. So that clearly is our focus. Most of the fetch, though, notice it's aimed off to the east, almost bypassing Hawaii, not even hardly getting focus on, we'll say, San Francisco northward, or really Pacific Northwest looks to be the focus. Pushes over the date line on, there's the date line right there, with 50 knot winds on Tuesday night, and then almost starts moving into the Bering Sea, but manages to stay south of the Aleutian Islands just barely with 45 knot winds, generating more fetch and likely some seas, and continuing into the northern Gulf as we get into Thursday. We know there's a sort of a trough thing supposed to be building in this area, some upper level support as we get into Friday, but still winds still just 30, 35 knots, a little bit of fetch building supposedly off of Oregon to 35 knots on Friday night. And then we know there's another little something that's supposed to be going on out here. So we get into Sunday, and there we go, 30 knot winds, but nothing really obvious. Another low building over the date line as we get into, well, we'll just go right out to 180 hours. Into, we'll say Sunday night, early Monday, maybe something on the date line, but we never believe a model a week out. And some sort of low pressure generating, 25 to 30 knot winds. That'd be wind swell mainly for Hawaii and California. And that's kind of it. All right, let's go take a look at the wave models, see what they say. Just a quick rewind first for the northern Gulf of Alaska. This was Wednesday night, a couple days ago. We had a low or a gale that built with 30-something foot seas pushing into Vancouver Island, with secondary fetch behind that at producing 22-foot seas. This is what has generated swell that is hitting California. The issue was supposedly there were supposed to be big waves. It really wasn't that big. It was, 10 foot, maybe 12 foot, something like that, but just blown to smithereens, not even hardly not rideable really on Sunday, except the most protected spot. Saturday was a little bit better, but still pretty junky, funky mess. And there we are at current time. All right, let's go take a look forward. There we go, 18Z Sunday. So the fetch fades off of California as we get into Monday. A little bit up in the far northern Gulf. What is that? Maybe 27-foot seas. So that's good for maybe some little sideband, very north-angled swell dribbling into California. It is the system, though, off of the North Kuril Islands that's of most interest. 44-foot seas on Tuesday morning, pushing over the North Dateline region, again 44-foot seas, and then down to about 41-foot, just barely shy of the Aleutians here, but that's still in the swell window for California, mainly north of Point Conception, pretty north angle for San Francisco Bay Area. That's about 306 degrees shadowed, but swell nonetheless. Supposedly forecast the gale pushing into the Gulf of Alaska on Thursday with 31-foot seas, and then fading from there. So some swell is possible for the weekend. Let's see what, if anything, the local gale forms again Friday night, pushing into the Oregon, North California border, 22-foot seas, and then that probably mixing with the dateline swell. So probably a pretty raw, jumbled sort of swell pattern, sea state situation. We get into Sunday, seas building into the 16, 17-foot range in the Gulf of Alaska, and we're 180 hours out, and that's it. So wind swell likely behind that, and then something for the dateline possibly too. And a quick look at the southern hemisphere. There is another gale forecast down there. 30-foot seas on Monday, quickly fading to 28-foot seas. That's probably good for 15, 16-second period swell a week out. So the middle of not this week, but the week after that, assuming it all forms. A little bit of rejuvenation in the far southeast Pacific. Then after that, things get very quiet. Not a whole lot going on, as would be expected for this time of year. The focus is the northern hemisphere now. We don't like doing this time of year. I mean, no one's interested in riding wind swell. Typically, I'm looking for 15-second period swell or better once you get towards the Thanksgiving time frame. But wind and high pressure in the Gulf of Alaska has been a known factor for months now, associated with a developing La Nina pattern. So this is more a function of just watching to see how bad and how windy will things be. Okay, well, we looked at Sunday. We knew that was a windblown net mess. Monday, high pressure in control, 1032 millibars. East winds pushing into the Hawaiian Islands, generating wind swell there. Wind swell for Northern California, or for North and Central California, continuing. You see 15, 20 knot winds along the coast, but fading. Not nearly as bad on Monday as it was on Sunday. On Tuesday, wind swell, solid for Hawaii. Long fetch of easterly winds at 15 to 20 knots. Fortunately, the wind machine breaks up for California. Still pockets of north winds, but we get into Wednesday. Wind swell continuing for exposed east-facing shores of the Hawaiian Islands. Little low pressure developing off California. You see weather building in the Gulf of Alaska. We'll roll it out. The good news is light winds. Pretty much the latter part of the coming week. Maybe that'll give us a little hope for a rise in temperatures. All the strong wind creates massive upwelling. You get cold waters. You really need south winds to start warming things back up again, but we don't see that happening. Anyway, Friday, little local low. Will the winds stay north of California? And the answer is it looks like pretty much just short bursts of south winds. That was it. Light wind wind pattern expected for the coming weekend. That's a week from now. And then where are we? We're almost a week out. Of course, the fetch dries up for Hawaii. So maybe, just maybe, the wind machine will back off after about Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. And then precipitation. So there was snow up in the Sierra and the Tahoe region. Nothing, 6 inches maybe or something. Not enough to ski on. You can still see the weeds poking up through it and rocks through it and all that. But it is a start. Temperatures are colder. This is typically the time of year you start building a base. Only on the very best, the most intense years do you actually get decently skiable snow in the Tahoe region by Thanksgiving. So we're kind of pretty much on track, maybe a week behind, but nothing unusual. All right, and here is the weather system Sunday night. And that pretty much fades out. We're just looking at the California really here for weather, or up into the Pacific Northwest. Another low pressure builds in early Tuesday. Snow in the Cascades. Moderate, not severe. Nothing really for California. We continue on. Another system expected Thursday night into Friday into the Pacific Northwest. Will it make it into California? To Cape Mendocino, yes, on Friday. And then building stronger. So this looks a little bit better than earlier runs today. With snow building into Tahoe Friday night, rain down to Monterey Bay. On Saturday, things dry out a little bit, but then I think there's one more little system forecast here. Oh, nope, as we get into Monday, it doesn't quite show, but another system building out beyond that. So then we'll just look at the pure snow model, see what's going on for the whole northwestern U.S. We'll just sort of pop this through. Monday, Tuesday, we'll say snow for the Pacific Northwest into almost Wednesday. That fades out. Another system pulls in Thursday night into Friday for the Cascades, working its way Tahoe right here. Let's see, does it make it? There we go. It does on Friday night. And a little bit into Saturday morning, so maybe building a little more base there. Continued snow for the Pacific Northwest. This is where we think the bullseye will be this entire winter. Down here, not so much, but maybe we'll be surprised. Another system on Monday, so this is the GFS model, goes out 10 days. And then notice this broader front pushing in, lots of precip forecast as we get into Monday a week from now, and focus pretty well. Heavy snow in the Tahoe down into, well, even into the southern Sierra. Where are we at? We go, oh, and there you go. Strong snow. Of course, do you believe this? No, way too far out. But it gives you another event on Wednesday of the week. Whoops, that's it, of the next week. So that gives us some hope. Let's go look at some spot forecasts. Squaw Valley snow amounts 10 inches, let's say, until that big system comes in. Was it Monday and Wednesday, a week from now? And then theoretically 3.5 feet. Again, we cut the model off at not even a week, but there is some hope here. Snow, the freeze levels, we'll look at that in more detail, but roughly speaking, freezing well below the top of the mountain the entire duration, but above freezing during the days at periods up to about 7,000 feet, and one little pulse here up to 8,000 feet, so not so bad. And here's another way to look at it, and sorry, the lines here, this is the top of Squaw, the top of the highest lift, and this is the base elevation here, so you can see. And the freezing level is the white line. So you can see how it's somewhere in the middle between the two, but generally in about the 7,000 foot range, except for this area here. Then we'll take a quick look at Mammoth. Maybe 2 or 3 inches of snow happening today, according to this. And maybe another 2 inches or so. And then the following week, a week plus from now, theoretically getting an additional foot or so of snow. And then elevations, this is the base of Mammoth. Much higher elevation, 8,000 feet. The top at 11,000 feet. Snow level pretty much all at the base or or below, except for this one peak out on the 16th of November. So not too bad. And here's another view, same chart for Mammoth. This is the base of Mammoth. There's your freeze line. Yeah, it goes up to about 9,000 feet for a day or so, and then well below the base, and then it peaks up even above the summit there on Monday morning, the 16th of November. All right, let's go take a look long term. What's going on with the Madden-Julian oscillation, and of course, La Nina. As you know, we're very interested in the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation, this periodic weather oscillation that travels west to east around the planet on the equator. It has two phases, active phase and inactive phase. The active phase is the one we're interested in because it is effectively a low pressure system, and when it is traveling on the equator across the Pacific, it helps impart energy to the jet stream, feed the jet stream, which in turn helps promote storm production. What it also does, though, is it can reduce trade wind strength, and that is good in that it allows warm water in the West Pacific to start sloshing off to the east. If you get successive strong active phases of the MJO, they can usher in El Nino. Now, we don't expect that to be happening. In fact, looking here at winds, this is the West Pacific here, this is the East Pacific here, this is the equator there, that is the date line right there. The arrows, this is data from the TAO buoy array, a series of buoys strung across the equator used for measuring the strength of El Nino. But you look at the arrows here, the longer the arrow, the stronger the winds. Winds out of the east, very strong over the East Pacific, Central Pacific, and in this area that we're very interested in, the Kelvin wave generation area from 170 west to 135 east, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. Draw a box in your mind there when you get the active phase, and if you see these arrows getting smaller or reversing direction, that's a good sign that you're in for a Kelvin wave and for a good bout of surf. All right, but it is anomalies, the differences in normal for this time of year that really matters. Looking in the East Pacific, yeah, winds are strong out of the east, but the arrows, they're almost blowing out of the west, so that suggests winds are weaker than normal here, which is a nice break because they've been blowing strong for a long time. Over the Central Pacific, they start building out of the east, and then when you get into the all-important Kelvin wave generation area, they're pretty strong out of the east, exactly what we don't want to see. This is suggestive of the inactive phase of the MJO. Let's go look at the forecast. All right, this is a funky little chart. It is the whole planet on one chart, and all it's showing you is either the east component of the wind or the west component of the wind. The good news is that's exactly what we want to do for looking at the status of the MJO. Right, so where are we? 180 is the date line, so that's sort of the West Pacific. The very far West Pacific starts at 135 east. That's the Kelvin wave, the western periphery of the Kelvin wave generation area, so it goes right up like that, and it extends over to about here, 170 west. The blues are easterly anomalies. The reds and yellows are westerly anomalies. We want westerly anomalies in between this area going up the middle of the chart. So you see all we have is blues, easterly anomalies. That's the inactive phase of the MJO. Then we had a little bit of yellow, some westerly anomalies started around Halloween maybe, and are just about gone now in the Kelvin wave generation area. So that was probably the active phase of the MJO. And you can actually see they kind of like jumped over the date line and then redeveloped. California's at 120 west, south of California, and that's where they are today. But they're not in the Kelvin wave generation area, so that means these westerly winds are not helping to feed the jet stream, and they're not supporting storm formation. If anything, we have easterly anomalies in the Kelvin wave generation area, and you can see they're only forecast to build over the next week. All right, so we continue on our search looking for any hope or signs that the active phase of the MJO might develop. All right, so what is this? This is outgoing long wave radiation. Okay, fancy words for cloud cover. Remember, the active phase of the MJO is like a low pressure system, and low pressure systems generate clouds. So this chart depicts the presence of clouds. If it's positive, that means lack of clouds, a lot of sunlight bouncing off the ocean surface. The blues are where the active phase would be. Negative anomalies, meaning cloud cover, less sunlight reflecting off the ocean surface. All right, and where are we? South America, Central America. Equator, right through the middle of the chart, date line right there. Here's Australia, New Guinea, Kelvin wave generation area right there. So it looks like it's a neutral MJO, maybe an active phase moving out, inactive phase starting to move in. 5 days from now, inactive phase in control, building stronger and holding solid 2 weeks from now. This per the statistic model. Then here's the dynamic model. It says pretty much the same thing, only that the inactive phase of the MJO isn't to be quite as strong as what the statistic model suggested. Then we can drill in a little bit deeper. So what is this chart? It's called a phase diagram. The phases of the active phase of the MJO. It's showing you basically where it is in the planet, right? The active phase moves from the Indian Ocean, from west to east, over the maritime continents like Bali, into the West Pacific, into the East Pacific, under the United States, across North Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. Where the heavy dot is where the active phase of the MJO is. So this says it's in probably the far East Atlantic, getting ready to move over North Africa, something like that. And the further away from this circle here the heavy dot is, the stronger the active phase is. So an extremely weak active phase, and here are the projected 3 different options of where it's going to go, all of it saying basically moving into the Indian Ocean, either exceedingly weak or modest at best. This per the statistic model. The dynamic model says pretty much the same thing, with the active phase 2 weeks from now being smack dab in the middle of the Indian Ocean and pretty weak. So no real hope here. The assumption is also that wherever the active phase is, the inactive phase is in the exact opposite position on the planet. So you just go to the other side of the chart. Maritime continent, like Bali, that area, that's where the active phase would be. The inactive phase would be. So just trying to make its way into the Kelvin wave generation area. All right, then we have upper level models. This is up jet stream level, and it's just showing you the potential for precipitation. Greens are areas favorable for precipitation, yellows not favorable. One can assume where the green is where the active phase is. And then how do you look at this? So there's multiple, maybe 8 or so of these panels. South America, Central America, the equator right there. Date line roughly there. There's New Guinea, Australia. It just repeats, and you see this looks like the active phase of the MJO moving across the Pacific and into Central America on the 3rd of December. Behind it, just kind of a very mixed neutral pattern, maybe some light active phase. But it's really hard to even see any sort of a discernible pattern as we get in December, into mid-December. Just nothing, kind of a mixed bag, not particularly supportive of storm development in the Pacific. All right, so then we'll go look at the CFS model. This goes out, a month, November 7th to December 5th. All right, and again, whole planet on one chart, date line running right up the middle, Kelvin wave generation area from here to here, okay? The heavy contour is the active phase of the MJO, so Here we are, November 7th, active phase of the MJO, moving east of the Kelvin wave generation area. California's here, so not even quite, maybe south of Hawaii, we'll say. And the reds are westerly anomalies. The blues are easterly anomalies, and you see the forecast. It's pretty obvious. Strong easterly anomalies, forecast building, filling the Kelvin wave generation area through December 5th. The dotted contour is the inactive phase of the MJO. It's setting up, building strong, and mixing with this. The purple is a high pressure bias, basically the signal of La Nina. So when you get La Nina, which already loves to produce easterly anomalies, and you get the inactive phase of the MJO, they line up with each other, and the easterly anomalies just start nuking very hard. You get much upwelling down on the equator. It's all on the equator. And what this does is really steals energy from the jet stream. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be storms, there won't be surf, but just the odds of a big, lumbering storm rolling across the Pacific are pretty low in these sort of scenarios. Then we'll take a look at the 3-month CFS model. We don't believe models going out a week, much less 3 months, but hey, what the heck? We give it a try, always looking for some sign of what's to come. Right, Kelvin wave generation area starts from there, 135 east, the whole way up the chart, to 170 west, right there. Okay, and what you see and this is the forecast up here, this is past performance. We see the blues, easterly anomalies, in control of the Kelvin wave generation area until somewhere right around here, like Christmas time, December, maybe the active phase somewhere in there. And then it kind of fades some. Let's overlay the MJO, see if our guess is right. All right, there, the solid contours, the active phase of the MJO, moving east today of the Kelvin wave generation area. Maybe give it another 2 days and it's out of there. Westerly anomalies associated with it, south of California, but that doesn't do us any good for imparting energy to the jet stream. It has to be in the Kelvin wave generation area. The dotted contour, inactive phase of the MJO, sets up like we saw before, easterly anomalies taking control into, probably just before Christmas. And then right about that time, you see the active phase, a pretty solid active phase of the MJO forecast in the western Kelvin wave generation area, say maybe December 10th or so, and building the whole way through the new year and midway into January. So this would be a good time right here for maybe expecting some surf and some swell. And then, of course, the active phase fades out into mid-January. But, westerly anomalies hang on, kind of a mixed bag pattern. Not nearly as bad as what we're about to get into. Let's overlay the low-pass filter, and you can clearly see what's going on. Dotted contour is a high-pressure bias. Today, in the Kelvin wave generation area, 2 contours in control. The problem is we get into December 15th, we're into a 3rd contour, and by we get into January, a 4th contour. We were hoping that we might get lucky and there would just be, this would be sort of a short-lived weak La Nina, but everything now is saying this La Nina is just building strong, going to be firmly in control the whole of winter and probably a lot of next summer as well. The low-pressure bias that we desperately want to see in the Pacific is firmly building in the Indian Ocean. If you're planning on a surf trip next summer, Indian Ocean would be the call. Two contour low pressure bias in control there. That's where all the action will be. The Pacific pretty much locked down by high pressure, looks like, for the majority of the winter. All right, so enough of the MJO. Let's go talk even longer term. El Nino, La Nina. We know La Nina, but let's go examine how strong, how well is the ocean and the atmosphere becoming coupled or joined at the hip with this La Nina type pattern. Right, so we start out looking at ocean temperatures. This is the West Pacific here. This is the East Pacific here. This is data from the TAO buoy array. There's buoys strung across the equator. These are the actual anchor lines on the buoys. The X's are sensors on the anchor lines. They collect data, and then you use a model, or a model is applied to that data to get a sense of a profile of subsurface, not the ocean surface, but down in the ocean, down 100 meters, down 200 meters, about 600 feet into the ocean. What's going on? It's from 150 meters up that is really of interest. You see This is the 29 degree isotherm, 29 degree centigrade temperatures. Warm water. In the far west Pacific, 28 degree isotherm at 175 east. It was over at 178 west last week. It has retrograded significantly, meaning trades are blowing hard, blowing all warm water as far into the west Pacific as you can possibly get. 24 degree isotherm is at 145, almost 146 west. It was over about 135 last week. So again, the same scenario. Then the 20 degree isotherm, just a very thin layer of warm water at the surface, and even that's pretty minimal. But it is the anomalies, the differences from normal for this time of year that really matters. You see warm water here in the West Pacific making no headway. It's been locked, what is that, 160? Yeah, so, oops, there we go. 160 west, that's unchanged from last week. But cool temperatures, -1, -2, -3, almost probably -4 degrees in here per this model. Pretty much filling the entire eastern and central Pacific. And where's the date line? It is right here, at least to the date line, if not further, maybe the whole way over to New Guinea. So a cold water regime firmly in control. There is another model here we'll take a look at, and you can see pretty much, we didn't want to go that. We wanted to zoom in. There we go. All right. You can see it's suggesting even cooler water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5 degree below normal centigrade. That's like 8, 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Much colder than normal water, filling functionally the entire Pacific. This is not a Kelvin wave. This warm water is making no eastward progress whatsoever. Trades nuking and in control, causing upwelling and pushing cold water from off of Ecuador the whole way across the date line to at least New Guinea. A quick confirmation of that, sea surface height. Strip out the wind waves, strip out the swell, strip out the tides. Here's South America, Central America, Mexico right there. There's Hawaii. This is the equator. This is the date line. You get the idea. And what do we have? Negative anomalies, a dip in the ocean surface, right like that. Because cold water at depth contracts. When it contracts, the surface sinks below. It's sort of like a sinkhole. 20 centimeter depression, that's pretty deep indeed, pretty strong. Indicative of cold water in the equatorial Pacific, Kelvin wave generation areas over here. But when you have cold water here, you get high pressure north of it, both north and south of it. And California is like right there. And if you have high pressure in the Gulf of Alaska, which in essence we do, then that really puts a damper on storm production. Put things in time historical perspective. This is the upper ocean heat anomalies for the Pacific Ocean. This is the West Pacific here, East Pacific here. And back in time, December last year, Kelvin wave, the oranges, reds, warm water pushing its way across the Pacific, finally made it into the East Pacific in April. And right about then, that's when east anomalies started blowing up. That's when you started seeing cold anomalies developing in the East and Central Pacific. A little bit of a break back in July. And you can just see where we're at now, much colder. And the expectation is with the inactive phase of the MJO building and easterly anomalies expect to forecast to get pretty strong from now till mid-December. This is only going to build and waters are only going to get colder, which will feed more high pressure, which will do more to dampen storm production and minimize precip into California. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's just the odds are not in favor of it. All right, so let's go take a look at ocean surface temperatures. These are departures from normal for this time of year. No big surprise. Blues, colder than normal. We know all the data is saying temperatures are definitely colder below the ocean surface. We know trades are nuking. So all that cold water just bleeds right up to the surface. And you can see from about, 110 west. So let's say south of Cabo San Lucas out to about a point south of Hawaii. Far colder than usual water in control, driven by strong trades. sea surface temperature trend, and it's only on the equator we're interested. Now here, no, but we are interested. Look off of Peru and Central America. Chile. Temperatures are warming there, and we've been noticing that. We'll take a look at that again in a minute. But right on the equator, cooler than normal. We think what has happened, when the active phase was passing over the Pacific, right, and it's right in this area right now, it sort of dampens the trade winds, so water temperatures have a chance to start warming. This is only a 7-day trend. That doesn't mean that they're warm. They're just somewhat warmer than they were a week before. So, okay, we'll take whatever we can get. But still, even at that, there's still considerable cooling going on the equator, even though there's interspersed pockets of warming there as well. And then here we go. Here's the overall Pacific Basin sea surface temperature anomaly trend. The actual temperatures, of course, colder than normal, all off of Peru, Chile and Peru, over the Galapagos, the whole way out. Where's New Guinea? Right there, almost to the eastern tip of New Guinea. But what we did notice is down in here, this is not as deep a blue as it was a couple of weeks ago, but we think with the inactive phase poised to start building, this will again dip cold, and that will also make this water up in here start getting even colder again. Here's the sea surface temperature index, they call it, sort of a time series. This is the Nino 1.2 region. This is the area right there along Peru, Chile, the Galapagos that we said temperatures appeared to be rising, and you can see that here. By rising, still colder than normal, 1.13 degrees below normal. El Nino or La Nina is a half a degree variation. You can be plus a half a degree, that's El Nino for 5 consecutive months, or below for a half a degree for 5 consecutive months. We've been way, way below that for a long time now, clearly in La Nina territory. But that's not the official El Nino region. It is the Nino 3.4 region that's the official El Nino territory. And you can see temperatures there down, down, down. We're rebounding a little bit today at minus 1.459 degrees. Remember, half a degree is the threshold for La Nina. We're 3 times lower than that today. And with the coming inactive phase of the MJO forecast for the next 3 to 4 weeks, we expect these temperatures to drop down even lower than where they're at. One final indicator for El Nino or La Nina is the Southern Oscillation Index, difference of pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. Darwin is more in the Indian Ocean, Tahiti's in the Pacific. When the index is negative, which it isn't today, it's plus 13.36, that means that pressure is lower over Tahiti. If it's positive, that means pressure is higher over Tahiti relative to Darwin, and that's a sign of either the inactive phase of the MJO or La Nina. All right, and you can look down here for the past 30 days. Yeah, we had a negative reading here and there, but by and large, it's been positive. 30-day average, plus 2.96. Actually, that's not too bad. We should be way higher than that, but we just got through the active phase of the MJO. You can see we were up to 12 there, 12.5 at one point. When was that? 13th of October. The active phase of the MJO has really cut out some of that. We're down to 2.96. We'll take that, but we expect to be back up to 12 or 13 or maybe even higher in the next 3 to 4 weeks. 90-day average, 7 plus 7.67. Pretty much holding steady within 1 for the past month. That's actually not too bad, but even that, again, this is a 90-day lag. Okay, so the reality is we expect this is going to go much more positive, and clearly in approaching La Nina territory, though it doesn't look so horribly bad today. And finally, the official Nino 3.4, the El Nino La Nina monitoring region sea surface temperature anomaly forecast. Today, where are we? We're about not even quite mid-November, so we'll say somewhere here. Says we should be about minus 1.4 degrees, which I think is about where we are. By mid-January, down to minus 2.3 2.3 degrees or so, 2.25. That's indeed cold. And then slowly returning, trying to return to near normal in July. But even if we get to normal that's mid-July, so let's say August 1st, and then it's still another 3 to 5 months after that, so the whole of August, September, October, November, almost into December before the atmosphere realizes what's going on, that the ocean sort of returned to a normal state, and it starts reconfiguring itself. We'd be well into next winter before we return to a quote-unquote normal pattern. So for now, wind swell in control for the first couple of days in California. There's a little bit of, I'll call it wind swell, semi-swell in Hawaii right now. That'll fade out. There's a gale forecast pushing over the Kuril Islands here for the next couple of days, and then into the Gulf of Alaska. So swell is possible from that. And then some local gale-type energy by next weekend in the eastern Gulf of Alaska might add some energy on top of that. So possibly larger, raw, a little bit jumbled type swell. Also in the southern hemi, a little gale is forecast traversing the southern, call the central South Pacific. Maybe some swell to result for Southern California from that, but that'll probably be the last one of the season and not unexpected given the time of year. Beyond that, inactive phase of the MJO into mid-December, things will probably get a bit grim there for a while. But then as we get into December, things should be looking up with a decent, reasonably healthy active phase of the MJO forecast with some westerly anomalies. So that would probably be a sweet spot for surf production. All right, so that's it for this week. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. We'd really appreciate it. If you have comments, you have questions, please respond right in the comments section. We'll reply. We try to reply pretty rapidly. And you can subscribe if you choose not to. That's all right, too. Go to everything you see here is available on stormsurf.com. Go there. The link to the video will be posted at the top of the page. You'll see it. We'll have it by tomorrow morning posted up there. You can watch the video. And, of course, comments are always welcome. All right, so that's it for this week. We'll do it again next week. Same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.